Hello and welcome back to the Digi-Tools and Accrual World podcast, supposed to go for all of your accounting, tech insights and news in the UK and beyond. I'm joined today by the wonderful Indi. But before we get into that, we should probably call out our amazing sponsors. And the episode sponsor for today is Employment Hero, the integrated HR and payroll platform that is trying to modernize how we handle all employee information in one place. And we'll also be joined by Xledger later, diving into that modern ERP platform, talking to some of their customers and clients and how they, dive into a bit more on the challenges as you get more advanced in a mid-tier finance business. But as I referenced earlier, we are joined by the wonderful Indi Tatler. How are you, Indi? Feeling very well at the moment?
Yeah, I've recovered a bit. Not that you would even know, because the show always goes on. And as I was just explaining, that last time we recorded, I was fully medsed up. The time before, I was recovering from a bit of an allergic reaction. So I feel like this time, finally on the mend from some, which feels like weeks of just sludge. And It snowed today. And it snowed.
Oh, you got snow. We just got ice rain. And I can describe that. It wasn't hail, but it was piercing rain, which it feels like just fragments of ice flying at you.
Oh, that's sad. No, we had snow. My biggest regret these days is that I don't take more time to just be a giant child when I see snow. We were in a rush, we've got to get out the door, do the school run, and be busy. But I really just wish I'd just slowed down and just taken more time to just throw some snowballs at each other.
Was it that much snow then? It was enough it was gathering, you could collect it and play
Yeah,
with it.
not loads, but you could definitely throw a couple of snowballs for sure.
Oh, very nice. No, we've got nothing. We were promised something down in this area, but it appears we're slightly too warm over in mid-Essex.
Oh, wow.
Any snow.
Oh, you know what? It was the weather said a UPod, under promise, over deliver. It said, you're going to get rain. And then we're like, we got snow.
Oh, very nice. But I understand your pain. We're going through flu season in the house as well. Both my little ones have unfortunately gone in cycles. About 3 weeks ago, my son was ill and had to go to the doctors and get seen to. Then my daughter got ill the following week and had to go to hospital. It was that bad. And now my son is ill again. So what that just means is, as parents, you end up not getting any sleep because you're looking after your kids the entire time.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're so systematically sleep deprived that in theory, right now, you're at your optimal. Like, it doesn't really affect you because you'll just be really efficient in the times you are asleep. So someone like me, if I had to go back now to that, I'd just be ruined. So just count yourself lucky, okay?
What an argument. You are I'm so painfully sleep deprived that I just pass out is what you're saying, and it's really
You're
good sleep
efficient.
when I get it.
No, you're efficient. You've got probably the optimal balance. You just don't know it. That's why you're able to speak on this podcast today. See, the wonder that is the human body. Okay, we crack on to some app news.
Sounds good. Let's kick this off.
So we're going a little bit different this time, and we had a little bit of ganders into what's going on the Reddit sphere. So, you know, when you have Twitter sphere, or it's not Twitter anymore. So anyway, that to say, there was a Reddit thread that was posted, and it was from looked like a graduate that will be graduating in 2027. And they said that they were asking for some thoughts on PwC, saying that end-to-end full AI-driven audits are coming by 2026. So they are wondering whether they should even bother accepting the 2026 B4 audit internship, given that they're going to be graduating in 2027. Is it worth it? Because it's basically, is there any point in even going down this route if the job is not even going to be there? And it got quite a lot of pickups. Obviously, the internet has not taken that quietly, and the loudest reaction from some of the auditors on the trail was basically that this is marketing and not reality. People in the trenches are saying AI struggles to even summarize a document without making up numbers, never mind a FTSE 100 company. And there's a lot of pushback around the incentives. So partners see AI as a way to cut juniors, offshore work, and keep fees higher. But if a bot does the heavy lifting, then clients will probably ask, why am I paying the big four prices for software? But regulators still expect a human to stand behind that opinion because AI can't go to jail. So some of the sharper comments, which I was reading to Ryan just before we started, they hit deep. If you automate all the grunt work, where do the generation of seniors and partners learn judgment? So you end up having something that then doesn't really push down to then allow other people to really learn from the mistakes of the past. So you don't get seasoned auditors by skipping all the boring bits. But on the other side, there were people that were saying that it doesn't actually mean that robots storming the audit room and deleting all the jobs. It means AI threaded through every stage of the engagement. So ingesting the data, the sort of things that we're seeing at the moment, picking samples or crunching analytics or drafting things that you can then review and flagging anomalies. So it's not really science fiction. But again, that pattern detection that happens on millions of rows and consistent checks and exception spotting is quite good if you have a technology that's supposed to do that. And that's exactly what some of the people point out on the trail, is that it is an evolution. And if you think back to when Excel first launched, or the computer, that back then they thought that the profession was going to be completely sucked into a black hole. Then cloud came, and it was again the same thing. It's like the accountants are dying. We've heard this so many times before. But actually, on the flip side, people are saying, like, really, it's never happened. All it's done is helped you make a more interesting career out of something that was quite a boring function. So doing 400 copies of the same test is easier for the AI to do that. And yeah, I think that's really just the summary of it. There was some definitely contentious things that I'd say should we cover them? There was a person that said AI stood for, what did they say? What did I say, Ryan? Affordable Indians. I feel like I can say that because I am.
I like the fact that you asked our listeners to think back to when the computer came out, because I don't think I'm old enough when that came out, and maybe our listeners are of an age where the computer was released. But
I listened to a 5-minute podcast on it, and it talked about how Excel, and specifically the rise of the computer, revolutionized the accounting profession, and how it really did change it into something that became more of a consolidated profession, able to be regulated, able to then demand more from the person. And I think that's not going to change. A regulator is still going to demand a human signature, and boards will still want a human to explain the risk cause. So AI is not going to be able to replace and kill off audit as a function. But that, I don't think,
it won't kill off audit as a function, and it won't, as you say, kill off humans partaking in that audit function either. And I think you made a really valid point then, is that when we're talking about AI as end-to-end in an audit cycle, we're not saying it's just AI. We're just saying that AI is involved in every step. And that's really critical, because if we go back to what a lot of the big four have been pushing for AI, is that we're going to get rid of the junior level, as the people on this thread flagged. Actually, that just kills the entire pipeline of people coming through and learning. So you don't want to remove the junior level. You want to remove people at every level all the way through in a very balanced way, so that actually you are you're readdressing the balance between software costs and human costs inside the business, but you've still got that good balance of a pathway for people that can progress through. And I think that is critical, and something that is probably has been the wrong fear mongering over the last half a year to a year, where people have gone that entire bottom level because it's mundane tasks and just go, actually, that doesn't make any sense.
And I think there was something that was pointed out on the trail that said, look, think of it this way: if a team of 10 is going to become 3 people plus agents, who are the people that are going to get those 3 seats? And I think what they're saying is, yes, it's going to be the people that perhaps go in through the route of still going through the big four. So there's a lot of praise for that. But in general, it's also going to be those people that have come in early enough to still see complex files, learn judgment, and are fluent in the tooling. There is a lot to be said for the fact that, to this person that had started the thread, that it's not all doom and gloom. We're not saying that no one should apply to even go for some of these specialized functions, because in the end, the value is still going to be later down the line. We just don't know how the next 10 years are going to pan out, especially with what we're speculating could be a bit of a bubble as well.
Oh, it definitely will be. But I still think there's, because I know that the chair, the CEO of OpenAI came out recently and said that, no, chair of Microsoft, I think, I'll get this right. Chair of Google came out and said, I'll get there at the end, said that, yeah, he's expecting a bubble and it'll hit every business. But I don't think that's really correct. I think that there's a lot of good AI out there, and depending on what you're doing and using inside your business, it won't have a negative impact if there is a bit of a bubble burst, apart from maybe the economy will feel it. But I don't feel the bubble is too high everywhere yet that it's going to cause a massive crash, but now we'll see. But
What?
speaking of AI, I've got something from, I guess, our main headline app on anything AI related at the moment, and that is Intuit, who have released more AI agents. It seems to happen on a monthly basis at the moment, and they have released new AI agents for their Credit Karma and TurboTax platform. Now, this is not something that we generally experience over in the UK, because Credit Karma and TurboTax are much more US focused systems, but part of what's been going on and what we covered, I think, in the previous podcast, is that QuickBooks in the UK have now changed the Intuit platform. And as part of that, they're embedding all their AI agents into that platform, and with it giving you access to a lot more functionality. So I wouldn't be surprised if the likes of Credit Karma and TurboTax have a much easier transition across the UK market if they've got AI agents embedded in those systems. And some of the functionality that I guess they've brought out, or what these AI agents are doing, is they've got something called Credit Spark, which is a credit builder, which is turning everyday payments into prosperity, i.e. looking for those who have a traditional credit requirement and sourcing the right people in that way. And at the moment, the way they're doing that and building that out is it's with no fee or debt. Interesting in how they're offering that. You've got Credit Karma as well, once again, handling credit cards, so card offering through that platform as well. And then they've got a debt assistant coming in the Credit Karma platform. And they've got something called a refund assistant, which is coming soon, and automated tax filings. So this is something we talked about, I think, 2 years ago, maybe last year, actually, that TurboTax was the first fully automated end-to-end platform that was able to ingest client information, put forward a risk factor for someone to review, and then you reviewed it and essentially filed the tax return. They're now taking this one step forward, saying that they've become at least greater than 90% effective in identifying and extracting the relevant information. So for certain simple tax returns, it can go fully filing, complete automated tax filing for those clients. I would expect us to see things coming over to the UK soon. I think we've got some news on something similar, which has hit the UK shores recently. But as well as all of this and all of their new releases in the AI space, they've also, as of yesterday, announced a partnership with OpenAI. Now, this is interesting because this was a big announcement from Xero and all their Xero roadshows over the last few months. And now QuickBooks have done the same with a multi-year strategic partnership with OpenAI. So working off the ChatGPT platform and empowering what they call Intuit apps, which now sit in that new Intuit platform. So if you've not seen the way Intuit now looks, it's very app focused, and essentially those apps are AI powered. And two of the ones that were released recently were an Amazon and eBay integration. So taking all that data from your e-commerce stores, using AI and sourcing it into the right areas of your finance system. So we're going to see a lot of that, but powered by OpenAI moving forward.
That is so interesting, isn't it? OpenAI is powering it. I read recently that most of Andreessen Horowitz's portfolio of AI startups are using DeepSeek instead of OpenAI, just because it's 10 times less the price of what you would be paying OpenAI. So it's interesting that they've chosen the American company. I would have thought they would have gone for Anthropic, given that I think Anthropic has had like a strategic investment made by Microsoft. So yeah, this AI LLM war is still it's evolving, isn't it? It's
Going on.
still evolving.
Yeah, and I think there's still huge opportunity to automate a vast area of, I guess, the accounts function. And not going back to the PwC claim, not fully automate, but just a lot of the tasks that we do, take them one step further. But that's only possible either if you're using one single platform to do everything, or if you're using integrated platforms that share data effectively between them. And we do have a couple of releases from Karbon where they have integrated into new systems. They've integrated into Active Workpapers. So Karbon, the practice management tool, now integrates into Active Workpapers. This builds on Active Workpapers prior integration to FYI, another practice management tool where you're looking at sharing contacts and clients effectively between both systems. You're also then looking at creating or using the tasks inside the Karbon platform to link in with the work papers that sit in Active Workpapers. So if you ever get to a point where, okay, we've now got to the year end or periodic review, you can trigger that task in the Active platform. And then once that's complete, mark those tasks as complete inside Karbon. And then it's also integrated into Socket, or Socket's integrated into it. I'm not sure which way around, but essentially it syncs once again your contacts and clients. And as you take on a proposal for a new client, it will sync that information into Karbon. And if you are also redoing or renegotiating a fee or adding on a new service to an existing client, you can pull that information of what you're currently doing out of Karbon, create a proposal, and then push the new terms back into Karbon for how you're going to operate. And I think this is, if you're using Socket in conjunction with an AML tool, you've got a fully integrated flow now for anything that is onboarding or renegotiating with your existing client base.
Nice. It's very cool. Very slick. Drum roll, please. FreeAgent are now officially integrated with Pleo, the spend management platform across Europe. So this connection lets businesses seamlessly export company card spend out-of-pocket expenses and supplier bills and payments from Pleo straight into FreeAgent, arriving fully categorized with the correct VAT treatment and supporting documents attached. It helps, obviously, all those small businesses that we know have had complexity in terms of automated spend tracking with the less admin, or they don't have the time to at least, like, you know, I'm probably one of these people that it affects, just being able to pat the receipt quick enough to then get your expenses paid. But also that it gives the growing team like better control and visibility across multiple spenders and accounting practices that want clear, standardized books without chasing receipts or explanations. So what I thought was really interesting about this is it is a great collaboration, and FreeAgent have always done a good job of integrating new partners in, and they've been very choosy about that. But it looks like they've chosen to, or Pleo has certainly chosen to do this with Shift API, which is a platform that helps you connect to all different types of financial software in one click. So it looks like Shift in itself has helped facilitate this integration between FreeAgent and Pleo. If you look at Shift API, they've got quite a few different vendors in there. So it's not like the first time I'm hearing something that maybe competes a little bit differently from what we've seen Kodak do, but this time doing it more specifically on various types of APIs that would facilitate the interconnection between applications. It looks also like it has dramatically reduced the lead time to be able to get this to market. So where this should have taken by rights maybe 4 to 5 months, with all the testing and all the gubbings, has taken more like 4 weeks. So if this is a sign of things to come for FreeAgent, then it just means that hopefully we'll see a whole host of other different types of technologies that they might also want to embed into their application.
Yeah, I think this arcs back to a conversation we had from Ben at Access, in that they've been releasing integrations in a much faster way recently, using AI to do that. And I do wonder if we're going to see a trend in the movement in a certain way. We've seen a lot of consolidation recently, where apps have been developing new functionalities and bringing things in. But inside apps, they're building them in a very modular way. So if they needed to sell something, they could sell an element of it rather than all of it. And it means that if they need to develop something, the internal APIs, or the ways they're showing data, means it's standardized. So if they tweak something, it's not going to destroy other areas of the system. But by doing that, and also having the ability to integrate a lot more quickly, the building of the app stack again, and that kind of utilization of best of breed for certain functionality, becomes much more open to people, because now they've got a big choice of systems because everything's able to integrate a lot more quickly. We had a bit of a bounce where clouds came out and there was lots of systems out there. We started to see consolidation. I wonder if it's going to go back out. You're going to see a lot more integrations, a lot more niche focused solutions in specific areas which haven't been resolved yet.
True. Let us see. And Digits is also back in the headlines this week. So with what might be a very strong move for them, it's AI bank reconciliations. AI, gosh, baked directly into their agentic general ledger. So the system extracts, matches, verifies, and hands you a clean set of exceptions. They're reporting 75% less time spent on reconciliations and a shift from doing the work to simply reviewing what matters. Honestly, it sounds like the dream, but is there a grounded take here that, most accountants like yourself, Ryan, have seen dozens of apps promise exactly this type of technology and collapse under the real world mess?
Realistically, we're not going to trust it initially, are we? Because we're very skeptical people. But it's interesting that
Are
Digits
you?
basically saying,
What?
yeah, a little bit. It's interesting to see that the Digits are saying they can do this when probably 2 months ago, Sage put that as their pinnacle thing they wanted to achieve with AI, that we want to eradicate month end. So if Digits are focusing on saying they can pretty much do that at this point with an AI native finance system, then big leap forward. What I would say is that I don't want to see it doing everything at this point, right? I'd like it to be maybe drafting a lot and it's still got the review process in there. And as long as it's enabling us, like it's gathering the data, it's reconciling the data, it's providing certain information with queries and risk factors involved, and actually that speeds up what we do massively. And what I guess a period end closure could take a couple of days to do, which sometimes is the case, we can get that down to a couple of hours. That was huge. So yeah, it would be great if they can do it, but yeah, I am skeptical. And now I've got something, and I guess this arcs back to what I was talking about earlier with Intuit, in that we've now got a new tool on the block called Record OS, which is focusing on self-assessment, so personal tax returns, and it's looking to automate a large part of the data collection, the working papers process, the review side, and the submission all in one platform, which is something that I know others have tried in the past. We talked about TurboTax doing this over in the US, but essentially chasing or asking clients for certain information, receiving that in, extracting the information via OCR, and then pushing it into the relevant areas of the tax return. Now, the OCR can read P60s, P45s, and certain other documents at this point, but it's growing and learning all the time. The next phase probably will be standardized dividend, like certificates or receipts or whatever it is you'll call that document at that point. And then also moving into a bank interest extraction from bank statements. So those are the kind of simplified routes. I don't think it will get to the point of being able to calculate capital gains tax at this point. That's quite advanced. So focusing on the more straightforward tax returns and automating that, which is the vast bulk of what accountants have. And if you can do this, you can do this in a effective way, then actually you can leave more complex software for your more complex clients. And the challenge is that a lot of firms don't like that approach. They like to do everything in one rather than doing like in one system, rather than having two systems and segregating your clients across that. So it would be a bit of a mind shift for accountants to handle that. But this is new. It's just launched, and I expect them to significantly increase the functionality of the software over the next couple of years. And what I would say is that I saw this as it was being developed, and what they were doing with it was incredibly simple from user interface, but very powerful from the way it processed and solved some of the huge pain points that I've always experienced regarding data collection and extraction, which once again will go down to what we talked about earlier, Indi, in the more junior role. How can we streamline, automate more of that junior role so they're actually learning the top end, more complex areas earlier in their journey through an accountancy profession, rather than just manual data entry, which is mundane, boring, and mind-numbing.
I've got something different. Vinyl have released their mobile app. So Vinyl, for those of you who aren't aware, provide recordings for meetings and take that and turn it into an output that is a series of actions and more tailored to the accounting profession overall, run by Trent McLaren and Jordan Vickery, who co-founded it. And they've now launched their mobile app, which allows you to have the same great benefits of Vinyl, but this time you can record in-person meetings. So you get all of that translated into a series of actions outputs that then syncs, and then you can carry on with your merry day. I really don't understand sometimes how this differs from some of the other technologies like Otter AI as well that's out there that has also done this, or even Gemini's own function in some of the things that you can use it for. I guess there's something good about having an app anyway with it, and it's maybe more specialized based on it being trained and relevant for accounting firms.
Yes, so it's not about the ability to transcribe what's being talked about, whether that's being on an online meeting or now in person via the mobile app. It's all about what that data is then summarized into and how it's pushed into relevant tools that we might use to automate next steps. So that's what Vinyl focuses on compared to the other AI note, the more generic AI note takers out there. It will look at what does an accountant need to know and summarize that information and get rid of a lot of the nonsense conversations that you might see in a more generic app. And also with its integrations into some of the practice management tools, it can create tasks off the back end of that. Now, this is still early on in that final journey. They've released a lot of what they want to do over the next few years, and they've taken on investment to be able to do that. And a lot of that will then look into upselling, cross-selling, etc., with your client base. And so not only are you streamlining, creating data that you can then run AI scripts over, which at the moment, the biggest weakness in an accounting firm is that we have loads of data regarding anything compliance basis, but anything advisory, we don't collect any of it. If you're recording your meetings, now you've got that data, and as you build out AI engines across your platform, you can run that across data. So for example, if you wanted to know how many clients have we talked to about property advice, you'd be able to run that across all of your meeting notes and get that information in one place with a summary. Yeah, I think overall it's a great release. Or would I say great? I think it's a helpful release for the mobile and with the mobile app, because it means you can cover all of your meetings. And that's essentially what you want this tool to do. You don't just want it on a video meetings because it's going to miss critical other meetings you have with your client. You want all the information about everything you talk to with your clients across various staff members, so you can use that data to train, enhance your service, and also pick up anything's risk. So I've had it before when I know of accounting firms that have uncovered that one of their team member or even the entire of the team have been giving the wrong advice to clients, but trying to identify what clients that's been provided to. If you've got meeting notes on everything that you've had, every conversation you've had, and you can then run a script with an AI agent across all those meeting notes to extract who has we given this advice to, then you can quickly and easily repair that by reaching out to those specific clients in a very timely manner. And that's something that you can only do if you're gathering the information up front and using a tool that's really aimed at accountancy firms to summarize that for you. I've got my last bit of news today, and it's on a topic I seem to love at the moment, which is Dext-based updates, which seems to be never ending this year as they constantly release new features and functionality. This isn't huge, but it did catch me by surprise as I was trying to work with a client recently and found this functionality in the settings inside the client's platform. And that's the ability to customize categories. You can now show or reduce what a client sees or your team sees when you're putting documents through Dext. So no longer do they have this infinite list of chart accounts. You can reduce that down to what is relevant for them. You can do that via groupings as well. So that is a big plus. Plus, you've got the ability to bring your own team into approval workflows, which used to be locked down to users on the individual clients. And they've built out smarter workflows for the data management side inside Dext as well, with the ability to bulk archive. Now, these are still constant releases, but I know that they're working on a very advanced AI tool as well, which should be coming out over the next couple of months. I'm excited to see that news when it hits our podcast.
I'm going to end our app news this week with just the good news. Good news feels. Lucy Cohen has been appointed. Lucy Cohen, for obviously people who live under a rock. Lucy Cohen, the CEO of Mazuma, founder and entrepreneur and industry leader, has been appointed as the president of the AAT, succeeding Michael Stead, with Craig Dyer appointed as vice president. This is great. We love Lucy. We think that she's done quite a lot for the industry. Obviously, it's been recognised by the AAT in the past because she's helped shape diversity and inclusion for small businesses and has won awards or been recognised as a leading advocate for inclusivity and small business growth by the AAT in the past. So it's really good to see someone who started their career as a 23-year-old as studying the AAT and co-founding Mazuma from her spare bedroom, she built a subscription-based accountancy firm and now employs over 70 people, serving more than 10,000 SME clients across the UK, and has continued to just give back and give more of herself in terms of the efforts that she makes in terms of the studies on the gender pay gap or things that are then pushing for more inclusivity, even just across borders, where she's earlier this year, she did a tuk-tuk ride from Chennai to Goa or Goa to Chennai, the other way around, which was, again, just every step of the way giving back. And I think that it's really great that she now wants to give back to the professional community that gave her the start. It'll be really interesting to see how this incarnation of the AAT evolves under her stewardship, because I'd like to think that someone as strong, ambitious, driven, and forthright as Lucy brings the AAT into a new era where you see people questioning, like we said at the start of this podcast on a Reddit thread, whether they should even be going into the profession. Hopefully under her stewardship, it gives confidence to all those that are thinking of going into this. And she's been a long time advocate for, in general, I guess, mental health, which does stem to the fact that we have a generation that's coming up the track that has really had to go through the wars of COVID, of technology, which has created a lot of social distance, and sometimes that social media, which has also compounded this feeling of disconnection. And I think that having someone like Lucy at the helm is really going to be something that helps the accounting profession overall. But I'm also the fangirl. We recognise that I think that she's just the person that has probably been the standout in our industry overall.
Yeah, massive congratulations to Lucy, and a massive win for AAT. I think if there's anything that should happen, it should become much more digital focused with all of her achievements in that space. Great way to wrap up news this week.
My only gripe, because I feel like we need to end on one thing, which is a gripe. The article said that she was the youngest ever. And I just thought, I don't like that. Why did you have to say that? And it was just good enough that you had her appointed. We don't need to say anything else.
I think it's still a positive, right? Maybe they're realizing that they've only put in people that are slightly more out of touch to the younger generation in the past. And hopefully Lucy will be able to give both sides, those that are more experienced, have been around for a while, probably like myself, and those that are new to the profession as well. Yeah, exciting times for the AAT. So we're back with our Xledger section, and we're actually joined by Anoop Rahal from BKL, I believe. You just transitioned there. And we're talking about the importance, or actually maybe more the trend towards outsourcing in the mid-market space. And I know that you've been working with Xledger for quite a while. And so I guess my initial question to you is, why do you think that this mid-market space now is where people is expanding in this outsourcing manner?
Yeah, I think, look, a lot of clients, I think, in that mid-market space have probably found, it's just generally all in the country that we're feeling it in every sector, that there's a bit of a talent pool, like a missing talent pool that we really need. And we haven't really got the trainees and people coming through. And actually, when you look to the kind of industry-specific roles, not in the rude way, it's a bit like dead person's shoes, like you had to wait for the person above you to move on. But actually, we haven't got that succession planning within there. And what I'm finding a lot more is that, I think I've been saying this a lot to other people, that there's almost been, when you take on a client, especially at the beginning, like the tech sector, there's almost like you're doing everything, then they dip down while they hire a team. But what I've also noticed, there's a kind of resurgence as they get bigger and bigger of needing some sort of support. And it's not, I think people don't realize it's not the full support. Sometimes it might just be the back end or the front end or some of the bits in the middle in terms of the processing, the management accounts. And a lot of them actually have quite mature finance teams, but they don't really want to expand them any further.
Yeah. So it's taking kind of that fractional term we hear everywhere now and bring that in, but you're providing a fractional outsourcing service.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's probably been an education piece around people using the tools. I think over the last probably 5-6 years, although something like Xledger, I mean, I first saw that in around about 2012-13. So it was a long time ago that I actually saw the tool. But I think that you can see it with the marketing in the space at the moment, that a lot more people are pushing those types of products. And like I say, I've used Xledger now for quite a few years, and I've had about 3 or 4 decent sized clients on there. We're talking clients with turnovers of hundreds of millions, and quite a big fee structure for us as a provider. And it's the fact that we can add a bit more value, and I suppose we can up our resource as we need to, or tailor it down. But they become a bit more reliant on you. And I've noticed that actually what tends to happen in that mid-market, especially when they move to a new system, I always say that an accountant should be able to use any system. We should have the knowledge to use any kind of system in the world. Okay, we need to understand how the system works, but we should be able to apply our knowledge on how to use it. And I think that's a bit of a fear factor as well with some of those mid-market firms. Is I normally see it with a shift into a new platform, and obviously that worry about upskilling the team, or somebody's retiring or someone's going off, and they actually think to themselves, we're going to have this problem going forwards, and is it worthwhile us retraining someone on a new system and bringing them through, and what happens if they leave? Or there's a partner out there that's not only helping us with the implementation, but can take on some of this work, and we don't really have to hire a larger team. We can keep the FD with an FM and maybe a few kind of internal people who are the front facing, say for the sales side especially, and managing that piece, but they can take care of all that back end functionality and provide us with the management accounts.
Yeah, I completely understand this. Going through, I guess, the digital transformation process that I do for businesses, it can trigger a lot of things. And one of those is that people in those roles just go, I've just not got the energy to learn the new tools. Or it can also uncover where maybe they haven't been delivering the work at the quality that's expected. And that transition kind of unveils that. And then you have that internal assessment. And many times I've also been asked, like, do you know an outsourced provider that can help on the system? So completely makes sense to me. And that does make sense, right? If you're going through and doing the transformation, you understand how the processes are going to work for that business. So do you find that you're involved from the tech side and then it goes into the outsourcing element, or do you come in just purely from the outsourcing side?
No, so yeah, 100%. I think a lot of it, especially with the Xledger side of things, have been clients coming to us with a problem and saying stuff like, the system doesn't work, it's creaking. We're thinking about outsourcing as well at the same time. And it's that kind of approach that we take with them, because I think a lot of the issue is if you go direct to a sales channel, I've seen this quite a lot where clients go out and look for a system and they're like, great, we'll just plug this in because they've told us it works. Whereas actually, not being rude to a lot of people, but that's the sales angle, right? Yeah, it can do everything. And you get in there and go, what about what we currently see? And you're like, oh yeah, you have to buy another module. I know it doesn't do it. It does it in this way. So a lot of what we do, and I said it in sense of like process management. So actually, when we're talking to a client, I look at 3 stages. So it's look, let's get your statements of procedures down. Let's look at all your processes. What works? What do you need? What do you want? And what can you do without? And then going into the market and going, right, these tools will help you. This gives you 80, 90%, but these are a couple of workarounds that you have to do, but really doing a proper assessment. And then post that after the implementation is just being on hand to train them. And I think what you do exactly that, when you're doing that implementation and you're doing that process workshop, you flush people out. I know I've had a couple of tough conversations with owners of the businesses and basically saying, look, you've grown too fast. Your FC was great for the role that you had at the beginning when you were a smaller firm, but now it's multi-million-pound business. You need something else. Either we can support them or we can support someone new that's coming in. And they seem to be a lot more receptive to that kind of idea of actually, you do know the system, we don't have to train anyone else, and we can probably get someone in more specifically to look at our business rather than getting stuck down in an nitty-gritty.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. So yeah, I mean, as I'm experiencing it, the digital arm of an accounting firm really overlaps with the outsourcing arm, and sometimes they're the same thing. Sometimes they just work really closely together. But are you finding that, I guess, as this grows, like bookkeeping has grown into outsourcing and outsourcing growing into that mid-tier space, do you think that firms now really need to focus on outsourcing for mid-tier to compete against others, especially in the bigger firm space, the ones that are top 100, etc.?
Yeah, I think they've seen it as a new market. To be honest with you, every firm that I've worked at, and I've worked at quite a few, there's always been this element of, and I think Xero made us do the kind of smaller outsourcing, but everyone kind of had 1 or 2 big outsourcing jobs, especially when it came to US subsidiaries or overseas parents are looking at, US subs in the UK or just generally in Europe. And I've noticed the US market, they love to outsource everything. And I think it's that risk factor of not knowing the local kind of taxation, the laws and regulations, even Companies House and HMRC, they're fearful of that. And that's the whole point, right? We have the expertise. We should have the knowledge, not just about how we use that system, but what it's like to be an accountant in this environment, what you actually need to do as a business, but also doing that forward planning. So definitely, I think that smaller space, and I talk about Xero, but you're Xero, Sage and QuickBooks, you've got quite a few there. I think that market's got so saturated that people are starting to look at actually what else can we do. And I think there's almost been, and you may have seen this in recent years, and we've always said it, that consolidation of the app stack, because there's been so many apps out there that sometimes you can just have this Frankenstein building up. And part of the reason for using Xledger, if you've got an OCR scanning software, then you've got a payment module, then you've got a reporting module, then an approvals, you've got about 5 or 6 apps before you know it. And actually for the cost of what you're spending on that, and that's the education piece of going to clients, actually, you've got all this. We'll still do your bookkeeping, but we can actually do it more efficiently if we move it onto something else. And I think that's a knowledge gap. And that's why the mid-market has opened up, because we're all sitting there. There's still those people that are diehard. We use the small accounting software, but we can add on everything. And you just think that's a lot of time for your team as well to be trained up on every single app. So I think that's why that mid-market space, and exactly as you say, that digital piece is coming in quite a bit more. Because we always used to use, dare I say it, Sage beforehand, and I still do love Sage. I'll always love Sage. It was my baby back in the day. It was that kind of thing. We all were very happy using that piece of software or QuickBooks. Then we started to get happy using Xero. Definitely, we've always had this kind of digital piece within that accounting and bookkeeping space.
Yeah, and I think differentiation is becoming more and more of a challenge, as you say, because everyone is starting to go, oh yeah, well, I know Xero or I know QuickBooks. And in that bit where if you go 5 years ago, it's like, I'm a cloud accountant. That was new. Everyone was like, oh, that's interesting. Everyone's a cloud accountant or knows cloud now. And I think that it's gone hand in this rise of, I guess, cloud mid-tier finance systems and the rise of outsourcing for large businesses, because you couldn't really do it when you didn't have that native cloud. And as you say, if you've got this growing modern ERP of 17, 18 apps, it becomes a tipping point where you just can move into an Xledger. And I think the beauty of that is you're not losing the functionality you used to lose if you move to the mid-tier, because you've still got all the automation that all the lower apps or smaller apps can do just in one platform.
And exactly that. And I think it comes from both angles. So, for example, it's people on those higher tier systems like NetSuite and SAP and what they cost to implement, and just do any change on those systems. I'm not saying they're wrong, but they have a place in the market. And I think a lot of people, when they were growing and scaling, and it came around, when you look at it, it's normally transaction volume, it's normally complexity. One of the big ones is dimension. I can come on to an example of that where they needed a bit more. It's those people that are on those top systems who jump straight up and actually, we don't need that. Can we get something a bit more, a better cost point, but just a bit more in sync with our business? And so I remember I was quoting for a client, and this is pretty much how Xledger really got embedded in my firm previously, was we were looking to the market and everyone was telling me, yeah, we can do your outsourcing, we can do it on Xero and Xero. And I was like, given your business, why do you want to use Xero? I know you've got low transaction volume. We want dimensions of reporting, and we haven't really found that. And I was like, Xero's not going to do that for you. And they're like, really? No. I was like, nobody's explained this to you about tracking categories of what you can do. It's great, but you want multi-dimensional, you want employees and stuff like that. So you need to move on to something a bit different. And actually, the cost point isn't that bad. And it was like, that was a trigger point for them. And that's pretty much how we won that client, because we asked the questions and we understood what they needed, rather than just saying, this is what we use, shove it down your throat and have it.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of having that kind of digital expert in a firm tied to outsourcing, because not only are you going these systems, but if you are worried, concerned about growth or how your team adapt to this, don't be worried, because we can always fill the gap. And if that may even be short term, that may be a bit where, okay, your team, maybe some of them needs to move on and you need to find the right people to fit in that, which may take a little while. We can still fill in that gap. We can do that service. And if you prove yourself doing it, why would they ever hire someone?
And do you know what? That happens so much. I've seen that quite a bit. And I think that's, again, another space that people are attacking, because once one piece of software really well, so i.e. if you have the expertise in that industry, you've actually got a tool that works really well in that industry and you're using it for a few clients, definitely you get those recommendations where perhaps they're moving on to Xledger, and Xledger are saying, look, they've got a bit of a talent pool gap. Can you come in and fix it for them? So you might do a secondment for 2 or 3 months. And then they sit there exactly at that point saying, we're happy with the service, we're happy with the costs. And actually they pointed some stuff out to us that we wouldn't have noticed. So to ask someone internally, I'm not saying they don't have the knowledge, we're supposed to know about accounting transactions, VAT treatment, tax treatment. So we can do that as we're processing and doing that kind of work, or even reviewing the work that's been done by someone else. So that's the whole point, exactly to that point you made earlier about that fractional outsourcing role, is that we've got a part to play in any part of that journey.
Yeah, and you've got the wider resource. Say there's a complex VAT or tax issue that comes up, you've got the bigger team that you put on, where if it's just internally, you can't do that. But I think as a summary of what we've discussed here is that if you are, I guess, as a mid-tier accountancy firm, you really need to be considering the outsourcing element for your larger clients and moving into that. Yep, it's a way to differentiate now, but I think it'll become a must longer term. And getting the right partner in the mid-tier cloud-based finance platform space is the right way to go. And I guess as Anoop has found Xledger, that's his preferred partner of choice.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate. And that brings another Digi-Tools and Accrual World podcast to a close. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you've gained insights and knowledge to help you move your practice, your business, or just yourself forward in this challenging period. And if you want to ensure that you get the news as soon as you possibly can, please do subscribe to our newsletter, which comes out before the podcast on a weekly basis. And if you want to have your say, join the Digital Digest on a weekly basis at 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning, where you can join the live show and ask your questions to whoever is the biggest news topic that we've managed to rope into our show. Thanks again, and please do subscribe, and we look forward to you listening next episode.